I started 2025 off with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement over this YouTube channel. I had had a video on, what it was like living in a remote, isolated village that, had gotten a lot of views and was making me pretty optimistic about the growth of my channel. So that was keeping me motivated to continue making videos. I had a big list of videos that I planned to make and felt like I was on track to do that. And then very quickly into 2025, we had the most seemingly unreal and devastating news that one could imagine. Our dear beloved Stanley, who had been our faithful companion for almost 9 years, became very ill. You might remember, if you've seen my videos, that we had done a winter camping trip in early January. And looking back, I'm so happy we did that trip because we didn't know it at the time, but that would be our last big adventure with Stanley. And we had a great time. He had a great time running and playing in the snow. And we got back from that trip on a Sunday. And that following week, towards the end of that week, he seemed to be really wobbly on his feet. And at first we thought, well, maybe he had pulled a muscle or injured himself, but he didn't seem to get better. He became increasingly wobbly to the point where he would just kind of fall over, couldn't keep his balance. And so a week to the day of us returning from that winter camping trip, we rushed him down to Whitehorse, a distance of over 400 kilometers, to take him to an emergency visit to the vet. The vet had a look at him. She thought that he was likely afflicted with something called idiopathic vestibular disease, which is essentially a form of vertigo for dogs. However, she wasn't 100% convinced. She basically told us that likely it would clear up on its own very quickly. So we were pretty optimistic. We continued to monitor him over the week. At times he did seem to be getting better. But then by the end of that next week, it was pretty clear that he wasn't improving. We went back to the vet. Whitehorse is a fairly small city, so although there are vets, they don't have all the latest technologies. They don't have MRIs or CT scans. They basically have like an ultrasound machine and can do blood work. So the vet checked him over again, and basically they ruled out anything related to his blood work or anything to do with his organs. They all looked good. And so by a process of elimination, she basically told us that she suspected that he had some sort of brain tumor and that he wouldn't be getting better. Of course, for us to know with any certainty, we'd have to fly to Vancouver. We'd have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get that verification. And then even so, there's not really much they could do. There's not too many neurosurgeons for dogs around. Even if he were to go undergo surgery, there's a high possibility that his quality of life would be impacted and that he wouldn't even necessarily live that much longer. So, this was all a blur. I mean, a week or so before, our dog was running through the snow and having the time of his life, and, you know, in the prime of his life, not even 9 years old. We expected that we had at least another good 5 years together with him. And, you know, he was truly the love of our life. He went everywhere with us. We were so incredibly deeply connected to him. And I know, you know, most people are with their dogs, but, you know, both my husband and I, we've had several dogs over the years. There's definitely something different about this one. Coming to terms with even the notion that we would have to put him down was just absolutely devastating. Basically, on the Monday that the vet told us that likely euthanasia was our best option or our only option, you know, we were definitely in denial, and we were in denial. We were devastated. We were just distraught. And we stayed in Whitehorse for a couple days, and we just spent time with him, but it was obvious that he was declining, and he was declining rapidly. He could no longer walk. He didn't appear to be in any pain. He still had an appetite, but because he couldn't walk on his own, you know, he couldn't go to the bathroom on his own, and you could tell that it was stressing him out because he didn't want to have an accident. And it was just, he was so sad, and we were so sad. And then, you know, he was on steroids, although the vet said, you know, this is basically a temporary solution. I think the idea was to give him time for us to come to terms with what needed to happen. And then, you know, we just spent time with him, and we just realized that it was cruel to try to keep him alive. So we made the decision to put him down. And it was devastating. Yeah, so in any case, after that we came back to Mayo, and those were probably the most depressing weeks of my life. You know, our house just was so empty, and we were so sad. We just, everything reminded us of him, and our lives just seemed so lacking meaning and purpose. And it was an awful time. And then right after that, mid-February, so I guess we weren't even home a couple weeks, we had to leave again because my husband was scheduled for a major surgery as part of his, you know, cancer treatment. And so we left for Vancouver. My husband had a surgery. Everything went extremely well, as good as it could have. But it was awful to, you know, be going through these incredible, stressful medical and health procedures and facing these issues, and like not having your faithful companion and your emotional support animal. I mean, he wasn't technically an emotional support animal, but let's be real, he was an emotional support animal. So to not have him with us, it was just, yeah, it was really hard. So, I mean, yeah, like we have been through an incredible amount of emotional and mental sort of grief and pain and anguish, not only with the passing of our dog, but also with this huge surgery that my husband, had to go through. And he's still, he's about a month out of his surgery, and he's still recovering, and it's a long recovery, and it's been a very hard time on both of us. And there was just such an incredible void with the dog being gone. And strangely enough, the universe must have been listening to us, because when we were coming back to the Yukon and we were in Whitehorse, this animal rescue page popped up on my Facebook feed, and they had 3 little puppies that were up for adoption. And in my mind, when Stanley died, I was like, there's no way in hell that I will ever be able to get another dog. Like, Stanley was irreplaceable. It almost seemed like the notion of getting another dog would be like a betrayal to Stanley, and I just couldn't fathom it. But we love our pets so much, and we have so much love to give. And when our pets are gone, or when anyone's gone, really, like, that love has nowhere to go. And that's just so much, that's a big part of grief, right? Is love with nowhere to go. And, we saw these puppies posted on Facebook, and, we were like, let's just go look. We don't have to commit to anything. Let's just go look. So we made the drive out to where these puppies were being fostered, and we met 3 dogs, and they were same litter, but oh my gosh, so different in terms of not only their looks, but their personalities. And there were 2 boys and a girl, and we were pretty smitten with both the boys. And so as we were driving back into town that night, we were trying to imagine what it would be like. Mind you, my husband had just had surgery, like, not even 2 weeks prior. So he was extremely, limited in what he could do. And, we just kind of realized, this is crazy. Like, we cannot take on a dog right now. Like, even though in our hearts we wanted a dog so badly, we just really didn't have the capacity for one. And so we said, please keep our adoption application on file. We are looking for a dog, but now just really isn't quite the right time. And so the next day we were driving the 4.5 hours back. The whole drive we were talking about the dogs. We're like, oh, did we make a mistake? Oh, I feel like we made a mistake, I kept checking the Facebook posts, and I was like, oh, maybe we should get him. Maybe we should get him, like, puppy, come. Can you tell? Can you tell what happened? Anyways, by the time we'd gotten to Stuart, the first dog, one of the 2 that we wanted, had been adopted. And then again, we're like, okay, maybe this is a sign. It wasn't meant to happen. So we got home, and I went back to work. My husband was recovering, and God, our house just seemed so empty and sad. And then the sister had gotten adopted, and a couple days went by, and we noticed that the last little brother hadn't been adopted. And we were like, maybe it's because he was meant for us. So the Thursday morning, hey, get down here. Hey, get over here. Marv, come on. I was laying in bed with my husband, and I was like, you know what? Maybe we should just get that dog. I'm going to be off for March break. I'll have 2 weeks to spend with him. I can, do most of the work, and then you should be feeling better at the end of 2 weeks. I think we can do this. And he said to me, well, if we get it, it'll be your dog. And I was like, no, I'm not taking responsibility if this dog's a wingnut. It's our dog. It's not my dog. So then we kind of left the conversation there. And I went to work. And I wasn't checking my phone because I was working. And then at recess time, I looked at my phone and my husband had sent me a flurry of messages. And he's like, okay, let's get him. I want him if you want him. And then, oh, they reposted him. Like, there's lots of interest. Like, we're going to lose him. so I was like, okay, like, we're doing it. And sent them a message. We got the dog. And the last couple weeks have been, well, as you can imagine, they've been puppy land. So we have been extremely busy. I will introduce you. His original name was Flo. We renamed him Marvin. He's a mutt. I'm 57, like our Stanley was. He's quite a bit different personality-wise. He's very bold. He's very social. He's wants to get in there with all the other dogs he meets. The best guess is that his mom was part husky, part pit bull, and who knows what the dad was. He definitely has Rottweiler or Shepherdy markings. So this is Marvin. Gentle. He's seems pretty smart. He's a quick learner. He's full of energy, loves to play. And yeah, he's really returned a lot of love and purpose and joy into our lives after an extremely difficult couple months. In any case, today is the last day of my March break. It's a 2-week break. Mostly stayed at home, went for massive walks, multiple walks every day, trying to get this dog house trained and worn out because he's got tons of energy. So I guess all that to say that, we've been through some pretty trying times, but we do feel like we're coming out the end of it. And, spring is in the air. We still have a ton of snow, as you can see, but the temperatures are warm. It's melting in the afternoons every day. There are signs of spring. There are some pussy willows out. And it just feels like we're at the end, coming to the end of this long winter. And with that, I'm feeling, positive and optimistic. And with, a more positive outlook, I'm definitely feeling more motivated to make videos and post videos of life and adventures in the Yukon. And, definitely you'll be seeing lots of Marvin, as you saw lots of Stan. I'm just excited to have a dog. I couldn't imagine having a Yukon summer and going off to the lake and going off to the cabin and going for hikes and going off camping in the van and not having, a four-legged companion. It just seemed wrong on so many levels. So we're excited, and John's getting stronger and regaining his full, health and vigor in the coming months. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for hanging in there. Well, we've navigated the ups and downs of life. And if you're new, this isn't, all my videos aren't doom and gloom. Lots of them have to do with life in the north and adventures and cruising around in my van. And so I encourage you to go and check those out. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye.